For PED 621 curriculum model presentation, I have done sport education. The goals and outcomes of the sport education model are it's a curriculum and instruction model designed to provide students with authentic experiences that are thorough and enjoyable, that contribute to their desire to become and stay physically active throughout their lives. Also, the goal of sport education is to educate students to be players in the fullest sense and to help them develop as competent, literate, and enthusiastic sports persons who have experienced a variety of sport activities. The sport education curricular philosophy is first, there's deeper coverage of content. In sport education, fewer activities are taught in a given school year, allowing students to learn each activity to a greater depth than is typical in multi-activity physical education programs. And also, it allows for an expanded set of content goals. So within sport education, it uses seasons, which are much longer than activity units would be in a normal or a multi-activity physical education program. Seasons are designed to last long enough for students to learn and grow in various outcomes, the roles and in the roles expected of them. The sport education instructional philosophy centers on developing and sustaining small, diverse learning groups or teams. Within those teams that are modified, and what I mean by modified is instead of, say, in soccer, there's 11 people on a team that can play on a field at a time within that team. Within the sport education model, that would be modified down to about 5 or 6 players on a team. That way, everybody benefits from the learning experience. And within that, students have various roles and responsibilities, all of which contribute to the success of the team. Teachers still have responsibilities as instructional leaders. They should fulfill their responsibilities using strategies that are more fully engaging and utilize the talents of the students. And as a result, students will become more responsible for contributing to effective classes and for achieving the seasonal outcomes that have been laid out before the season has started. Examples of sport activities for the sport education model could be such team sports such as basketball, field hockey, football, floor hockey, lacrosse, soccer, softball, track and field, volleyball, and weight training. Those are some sport activities, but also, as you can see with weight training, that could be an individual or a team event. But then also, you could also use sport education for golf and tennis as well, and other sports, whatever other sports you think it could be implemented into. Could be used, the sports education model could be used for that. And so implications across the grade levels. First would be across grade levels is to educate students to be players in the fullest sense, as I said before, and to help them develop as competent, literate, and enthusiastic sports persons. Students in sport education programs from 4th through 12th grades should be reasonably well skilled in a variety of sport, dance, and physical fitness or fitness activities, more likely to become and stay involved in physical activities during their personal time. And then students are able to differentiate between good and bad sport practices, whether in youth sports, school sports, or community sports. And then students are more likely to become engaged with local sport organizations as adults to ensure that child and youth sport programs are designed to enhance the well-being of those participating. And so those are the implications across grade levels that students will come to by the end of this curriculum or by the end of the seasons. And so the national standards for the sport education model, it fulfills all the national PE standards. The first being the physically literate individual demonstrates competency in a variety of motor skills and movement patterns due to the layout and the way that each student is required to participate within their team and understand the movement patterns and motor skills that are required for that sport within that season. That allows for those students to meet that national standard. And then the second, the physically literate individual applies knowledge of concepts, principles, strategies, and tactics related to movement and performance. Within the sports education model, working within those teams have to come up with strategies and tactics, team plays, things that allow them to be successful within that movement or those performances that are required of them within the season. So that way that national standard is met. And the third, the physically literate individual demonstrates the knowledge and skills to achieve and maintain a health-enhancing level of physical activity and fitness. Due to the goals and outcomes of the sport education model, students have a longer period of time within that specific sport, so they gain and they should be able to gain and demonstrate the knowledge and skills and able to achieve the outcomes for the season. And so within that, the goal is that because they've become so knowledgeable within that season, within that sport, that they should be able to use those skills to maintain a healthy, enhancing level of physical activity and fitness throughout their life. And so that way, this standard is met. And then the fourth standard, the physically literate individual exhibits responsible personal and social behavior that respects self and others. Due to the nature of the way sport education model is set up, the students have to work together in a small group or within teams. And within that, they have to respect one another. They have to respect each other and follow the rules. And so that way, this standard is being met. And then the fifth, the physically literate individual recognizes the value of physical activity for health, enjoyment, challenge, self-expression, and or social interaction, in which the things that I just said previously for four could also apply to this as well. The nature and the way that it's set up is for students to enjoy the sport education curriculum because of the way that they are allowed to participate to their fullest. It gives them a small group as opposed to a larger group, and that way it allows them to actually enjoy what they're doing, but then also have a challenge of pushing themselves maybe beyond their comfort zone because they can't hide behind other students, and that they have to become leaders and step out and do things maybe they haven't done before. And so that also allows for self-expression and social interaction as well. With the New York State standards, they also meet this curriculum also meets the New York State PE standards. Students will have the necessary knowledge and skills to establish and maintain physical fitness, participate in physical activity, maintain personal health. The things that I had said before with the national standards also apply with this standard as well in terms of understanding and maintaining their physical fitness. With Standard 2, students will acquire the knowledge and ability necessary to create and maintain a safe and healthy environment. With the students having to work together in groups, this allows for a safe and healthy environment where they can encourage one another and help one another become successful within the sport. Because together they have to be successful. It's not an individual thing. Students will understand and be able to manage their personal community resources. With this curriculum, it's really important because they've gained such a deep knowledge of the sport and been immersed in it that they would also know the community resources that are available and be able to partake in those activities, those same sport activities that were provided within the PE curriculum, but they should also be able to participate in their community and also know about the community resources that are available to them. So that way it's met through that. And so the characteristics of the sport education model are sport education involves seasons rather than units, which tend to run longer than a unit. Students become members of a team. Students have specific roles within their team, such as a coach, a referee, equipment manager, player, and there's some more than just those few that I've mentioned. The schedule for competition is formal with a preseason, a regular season, and a postseason. There is a major event at the end, such as a championship game. The sport is recognized and stats are recorded. Stats can be recorded. It doesn't have to be for every level, but the more mature the students are and understand the rules, then you could start having a stat keeper for all the students. Students become submerged within all aspects of the sport due to the roles that they are given. And then also the roles can be rotated in order that everybody gets an opportunity to partake in each one of the things and understand the sport from every aspect. The role of the teacher is to give student-centered instruction. The teacher is present to guide the students. Teacher must establish strong rules and routines before beginning the sport activity. Instructs, facilitates, and assesses student learning. The model works especially well in a team teaching scenario, and then also the teacher is responsible for the grading. The role of the students are responsible for leadership, instruction, and performing. All students practice and play sports. Within the roles, there's a team captain or a coach. There's a manager. There can also be a general manager, equipment manager, and sets up the field or court. A referee is acquainted with the rules and the etiquette of the sport activity being played. Player, participates in and is a member of the team. And the scorekeeper keeps tally of game score as it is played. And also there are more roles that can be added, which is dependent on the class ability and the maturity of the class. But even within all of those roles, everybody still participates within the gameplay or the practices. Nobody sits out. Everybody is involved within the gameplay, but they just have those specific roles within and among their teammates and among their team. Advantages of sport education: it's a positive sport experience due to the fact that it's a smaller group and people have roles and expectations put on them. It learns values of sports such as reaching goals, teamwork, loyalty, commitment, perseverance, dedication, and concern for others. Also, it develops leadership skills, socializing with peers, participation, confidence to play in the sport, and knowledge and enthusiasm to further pursue the sport. And then also it's fun. So disadvantages of the sport education model are student biases in choosing teammates. So if you allow the students to choose the teams as opposed to you, the teacher, choosing the teams, their biases can happen that way. Requires maturity and responsibility among the students to be able to handle this type of model. And there's also different levels of seriousness among students. Some students are very serious about their tasks and doing well for the season, while others might not be as serious as some students. And so that could be a disadvantage. How to get started: first, the teachers should set their outcome goals, what they want the students to achieve by the end of the season. And so then once that's done, the teacher should teach the students about roles prior to the start of each season, talk about student conflicts such as sportsmanship and things that could arise within the season. A teacher should incorporate training sessions for individual jobs students may partake in, such as rules for the referee or managerial positions. Instructions or teacher authority may vary between grade levels and maturity. So if you have a group of students who can't handle the freedom that's given within this curriculum or within this model, you might have to create more structure for them and give them more things to do. But if they are mature enough to handle it and they are self-motivated and can really push themselves without your having to lead them, then you can bring back some of your authority. You can roll back some of your authority in that sense. And so also you can make necessary modifications to the rules and competition format based off of the students' abilities and experiences. So say if there's a group of students who are not as experienced as other students within the sport, you can have two sets of groups that play against each other and add modifications such as the number of players on at a time and things like that. So that way students are allowed to participate within their ability and within their experiences. And so also equality, all team members get to play the same amount of time, as I said previously. And then also balanced teams in terms of gender ability and behavior and more. If you as the teacher are the one that's creating the teams, then you should be able to know your students and know how to balance the teams properly. But if you allow the students to create the teams, the general managers or the captains, if you allow them to create the teams, then you would have to obviously put some guidelines in order to make sure those teams remain balanced. And so a sample season would be day one would be preseason, where the teacher begins by discussing the rules and etiquette, strategies, and roles of the sport. You would give handouts covering the rules, etiquette, strategies, and roles would be distributed to the students. Captains or general managers would be announced. The rest of the team rosters are announced. Usually it's determined by the teacher, as I said previously, but prior to class, or students can have a draft where the GM chooses their teams based on guidelines provided by teachers. This would be at a more advanced stage where kids are mature enough to make correct choices. And so the class breaks up into teams and determines the roles of each person on the team, and then if there's time left, they can begin practicing together as a team. And so that would be the first day, and that would be considered preseason. Then days 2 and 3 is still preseason, where teams would practice separately, warm-up activity, skill-based activity, team-building activity, schematic practice, where they would develop plays, determine defensive schemes, and work together as a team to come up with those things. And so the practice can be designed either by the teacher or the captains. The teacher plans the practice and then explains the activities to the captains who lead the practices, or the captains can develop practice plans outside of class, which must be okayed by the teacher. The teacher provides captains with a basic design for what must be included in a practice, and teacher also provides captains with resources for planning practices. So that's how the teacher is involved within this, but it really gives a lot of freedom to the students to self-teach and to teach each other. And so then day 4, you would start regular season, which would be the gameplay schedule would be posted. Then you'd have a written assessment covering rules, etiquette, strategies, and roles, just to make sure the students understand the rules and know what's expected of them once regular season starts. Then you'd have a warm-up activity where the teams will warm up together. And then you would have gameplay. And then day 5 would be regular season. You would have the teams practice together a little bit. Then they'd have a warm-up activity, and then they would play the game. Where day 6 through 8 would be regular season, where it'd just be a warm-up activity, and then they get into gameplay. And day 9 through 10 would be considered postseason. Would be an end of the season tournament. There could be multiple format options that could be used, such as round robin, single elimination, double elimination, and the tournament should include consolation rounds, so that way students or teams, once they aren't in pursuit of the championship anymore, they're still participating in class. But what also could be done is, once the championship teams, the 2 final teams, are ready to play in the championship, you could allow the rest of the students to watch the championship and then become spectators, which also gives another aspect of the sport. How can the sports education be used across grade levels? Well, an example of a sport education curriculum for grades 7 through 9 could include soccer, basketball, volleyball, gymnastics, and track and field. All have different characteristics that, taken together, make for a coherent, balanced sport education curriculum. This model has 5 sport education seasons per school year, each which allows sufficient time for students to accomplish the significant outcomes that have been set out before the seasons have started. And then in addition, the activities are repeated at subsequent grade levels, although not always in the exact same form, so you can create different roles. You can give more freedom to students as they get older. And so that's how some things could be changed from previous years. And then also the total amount of curricular time devoted to helping students become competent and confident in these activities is adequate to achieve the intended outcomes before implementing new sports in different grade levels. And then so the resources that I used or the resource that I used was the Complete Guide to Sport Education. If you buy this resource, there is an ebook that you can buy, or you can buy it in paperback form. If you buy it, then there's also includes online resources such as posters, score sheets, competition format templates, sample contracts, fair play materials, assessment templates, and more. So I really recommend getting that if this is something that you think you would like to use within a curriculum or within a school year.